He's one of the only men alive and uses his privileges to get revenge on the girl who bullied him. He's one of the only men left and has to repopulate Earth. After a virus kills almost all men, he has to repopulate Earth. He is forced to make babies for the sake of humanity. In Tokyo in the year 2040, a university graduate called Rito confesses his love to a girl called Elisa. Since they have known each other for over 10 years, Elisa already knew it and wonders why he didn't tell her earlier. Embarrassed, Rito tells her he actually has multiple sclerosis and that he will have to spend 5 years in cold sleep while he's being treated by an artificial intelligence. He tells Elisa he heard that another man called Meta confessed to her too and asks her what she wants to do, since he doesn't want to force her into anything. However, Rito being more aggressive is exactly what Elisa wants, so she starts crying and walks away from him. Later, Rito drives to the hospital with his little sister Mahiru and his older brother Ryu. In this world, science and technology have advanced so much that machines are doing most of the humans' work, so they can do whatever they want. At the hospital, Rito prepares the entire cryogenic sleep chamber and says goodbye to his siblings. Suddenly, Elisa arrives, wanting to say goodbye to Rito after all. Before she leaves, Rito gives her his pendant, telling her he's counting on her to give it back to him when he wakes up. As Rito is drifting off into sleep inside a cryogenic sleep chamber, he hears Elisa telling him she will wait for him as long as it takes. 5 years later, Rito is woken up by a woman who looks just like Elisa, except she's cold and distant. Talking to a doctor, she tells him the treatment was successful and he is completely healthy again. Afterwards, the woman who looks like Elisa picks him up in a futuristic car with darkened windows. She introduces herself as Mira, his new attendant. She tells him she will be entirely at his service and take care of all his interactions with the outside world. As Rito is getting confused, Mira explains what happened in the 5 years while he was asleep. 4 years ago, a deadly airborne virus called the MK virus suddenly appeared and caused a global pandemic. There's still no vaccine or cure for it, even though AIs and scientists are researching it all the time. Since the virus appeared, the world's population was halved and many technologies were lost. Not believing any of this, Rito runs out of the car and notices that the city has changed. The buildings are in a bad shape and the people are miserable. Strangely, everyone around Rito are women and they all seem to be confused by his presence. Finding Rito, Mira reveals to him that MK stands for male killer, because the virus only affects men. It turns out that 99% of men in the world have died and that the few men who are still alive after being infected have been put into cold sleep until a cure is found. Including Rito, there are only 5 known men who are completely unaffected by the virus. It is unknown why they didn't get infected, but they all received the same treatment for multiple sclerosis. Those 5 men are now considered the most valuable resource on Earth. Shocking Rito, Mira tells him he will need to have children with as many different women as he can in order to save the human race. When they arrive at a building called the Mating Center, Mira shows Rito an educational movie that explains more about the world to him. He finds out that this new world is governed by an organization called United Women, or UW for short, that has branches in every country of the world. They ended violence and restored order so everyone can focus on developing a vaccine for the MK virus. One day, a cryogenically frozen man being treated for multiple sclerosis was discovered to have antibodies that could destroy the MK virus. That man was secretly woken up and called number 1. When it was confirmed the man remained healthy, the other men who were undergoing the same treatment, including Rito, were woken up once the treatment was over. After he watches the movie, Mira tells Rito that only high-ranking United Women members know that he exists, so he shouldn't reveal himself to anyone. Having explained all that, Mira believes Rito should now understand why his duty is to have a lot of children. However, Rito still refuses to believe her and asks if there are any alternatives. Mira tells him that they tried artificial insemination in the past, but discovered that only making a woman pregnant normally can create male children who are immunized. Shocked, Rito wants Mira to take him home, but she doesn't let him since his safety is the priority. She instead gives him a tablet with a selection of women to impregnate, but he's disgusted and refuses to choose a woman like that. Suddenly, Rito's little sister Mahiru enters, happy to see him after so long. She shows him that their brother Ryu is still alive in cold sleep. When Rito asks Mahiru what happened to Elisa, she tells him that she disappeared 3 years ago. Sometime later, Mira tells her superiors that Rito doesn't want to procreate with anyone, and they order her to try harder and make him listen to her at all costs. That night, Mira enters Rito's room in a nightgown and gets naked. She says she has come to sleep with him, but Rito, thinking about Elisa, pushes her away. He tells her he doesn't want to take advantage of his privileged situation when so many people are dead or suffering. After Mira excuses herself, Rito remembers he gave Elisa his pendant, which has a transmitter inside that is still showing a signal, making him think she's still alive. The next day, Mira presents Rado with a room full of women who want to sleep with him and have his children. She tells him that in this world there are 5 billion women for just 5 men, and Rado tells her he's not livestock. Mira apologizes but tells him he has to hurry and do what he can to populate the world with his immunized children. She tells him that the men in cold sleep, including his older brother, will die in around a year's time because cold sleep only delays the disease's effects. Thinking about it, Rado tells her to give him a month to find Elisa because he only wants to have children with her, and Mira gives in to his request. The next day, another one of the surviving men called Kyuji is fully enjoying his privileges. While he's watching a movie, he's getting a massage from 2 beautiful women. Knowing he likes an actress from the movie he's watching, his attendant, a woman called Neneko, brings that same actress to him so they can sleep together. Making love to the actress, who is called Rina, Kyuji thinks how this world is amazing. In the dining room after their meal, Mira tells Rito she's going to assign a bodyguard and a nurse to him. He will also have to sleep in the same bed with them, since Mira wants to test his resolve not to sleep with them. While Rito is returning to his room, he is stopped by Kyuji, who turns out to be number 1. They introduce themselves to each other, and the friendly Kyuji tells Rito to enjoy the crazy world they're living in. While Rito is showering, the light suddenly goes out and a drunk naked woman joins him. She turns out to be a Kanin, his personal nurse. When she kisses him and starts washing him, Rito suddenly faints. Waking up, Rito finds a Kane sleeping on a sofa nearby and a small green-haired girl beside him. The new girl introduces herself as Sui, his bodyguard. When Akane wakes up, she climbs into Rito's bed too, but promises not to try anything with him, at least for that night. The next morning, Rito is tired since he couldn't sleep with 2 women in his bed. He decides to visit an animal experiments lab with Mira, Akane, and Sui as his escort, since he heard Elisa worked there after she graduated. Shortly after they enter, a bear escapes from its cage and starts running towards Sui, but Rito pushes her away and gets her by its claws. Suddenly, Sui gets up and completely changes her personality. She jumps into the air and kicks the bear in its head, making it fall to the floor unconscious. After defeating it, she returns to her normal personality and starts apologizing to Rito for not being able to protect. While Akane addresses his wound, Rito tells her it's no big deal. Visiting Elisa's lab, Rito finds out that after Elisa disappeared, someone broke in and stole all her research data. Seeing a photo of Elisa with her dog Jiro, he remembers that the reason that she wanted to become a doctor in the first place was because she wanted to find a cure for her dog's incurable disease. That same day, Rito decided to be a doctor too and help her. When Mira tells him that there are currently between 1 and 5 million live men in cryostasis, Rito decides that by finding a cure for the MK virus, he would be doing more good than by making babies. Soon, Rito reveals himself on TV as a man who is immune to the MK virus. He tells everyone that if he woke up, the other men in cryostasis may wake up too someday, and that he will find a cure for the virus. Sometime after the broadcast, Mahiru visits Rego and tells him he was reckless for revealing himself to the world. However, Rego thinks it was necessary because now he has permission to leave the laboratory. Picking up a plushie among Elisa's things Rito brought with him, Mahiru notices there is something inside of it. Opening it, Rito finds a device called a smart ring. Going to the bathroom to be alone, Rito activates the ring and a message from Elisa intended for him starts playing. On the recording, Elisa reveals she found out that the MK virus is actually man-made, but doesn't trust anyone except Rito. At sunset, Rito goes for a walk with Mira and tells her she reminds him of Elisa. He tells her he feels bad for being so uncooperative, but Mira just tells him he is a kind man. Later, while she's showering, Mira compares her looks with Elisa's. In United Women's headquarters in Japan, a group of directors discusses Rito's announcement about finding a cure for the MK virus, and they think that the United Women's global headquarters is going to try to stop him. They're also satisfied with Kyuji's progress and they want to unfreeze number 3 soon. Back in 2040, before the MK virus spread, a boy called Shadow was being bullied in a school bathroom by a group of boys and a girl. He's getting bullied because he caught those students abusing his only friend, after which they started bullying him instead. After that, his friends started avoiding him in fear of the bullies. This is why Shaba now hates everyone in his class for not doing anything to help him. The only person who cares about Shouta is his beautiful and caring music teacher called Yuzu. She would always console him, telling him he is a smart and strong boy who doesn't deserve to be bullied. One day, Shouta gets a fever and feels his body hurting, so Yuzu sends him to the hospital. At the hospital, he finds out he has an illness called cellular sclerosis, which is why he has to get frozen to get treatment. When Yuzu announces that Shouta will have to leave school because of his illness, nobody seems to care at all. Sometime later, Shouta visits the hospital to get cryogenically frozen. While he's falling asleep, he hopes the world will be a better place when he wakes up. 5 years later, Shouta is woken up by a hyperactive blonde woman called Karen. She tells him that from now on he'll be able to relive his high school days and have a lot of fun. Taking him to his new room in a student dorm, Karen tells Shouta everything about the virus, but lies about him being the only male who is immune against it. Shouta is expected to go to the same school he was going to before he was frozen, since Yubi wants to reduce his stress levels by putting him in a familiar setting. When he introduces himself to the girls in his class, they all seem curious about him, the complete opposite of the class he was in 5 years ago. Attending classes normally with Karen and the girls, Shubata is glad he doesn't have to see his old classmates who bullied him anymore. During recess, Karen takes him to his old music teacher, Yuzu, and they're both happy to see each other again. Karen tells Yuzu that she should give Shuta a reward, and Yuzu nervously asks him to come to her room that night. At gym class, Karen approaches Shubata and tells him all about the girls in his class, urging him to get to know them all better. That night, Shouta visits Yuzu, who tells him all about what happened in the past 5 years. However, Shouta isn't listening to her at all, being too nervous because he's alone with her suddenly. Yuzu asks him what he thinks of her, making him even more nervous. She dims the lights and grabs his face. Kissing him, she tells him that she wants to give him a reward for beating his disease. While they're making love, Shouta thinks he's in a beautiful dream. The next day, at gym class, a short girl called Chifu catches Shouta looking at an athletic girl called Akira while she's playing volleyball. Wanting to show off to Shouta, Chifu tries competing with Akira, but immediately gets a volleyball in her face, which bounces off and ends up hitting Shouta too. Seeing what happened, Akira gets concerned about Shouta and bows to him in apology, but he tells her it's not a big deal. Later, Shouta plays piano alone in the music room when Yuzu enters. Seeing he has a bruise from the volleyball incident, she gets worried and kisses his forehead, which leads into them sleeping together again. In Karen's room, her superior tells her that Shouta, who is number 3, has been a success so far. It turns out that the girls in his school all think Shouta is the only man in the world immune against the MK virus because they arrived there before Raito revealed himself on TV. Fired up, Karen wants to make Shouta more successful than Raito and Kyuji. A week later, Yuzu and Shouta continue spending time together, and Shouta feels fulfilled and happy. Even though he's embarrassed, Karen makes Shouta attend gym class at the pool with the other girls. While the girls are stretching and swimming in the pool, Shouta admires them. After school, Yuzu calls Shouta to tell him he can't visit her that day because she's busy. After Shouta's done talking, a girl from his class called Natsu enters his room, telling him she'll be staying there from then on. At that moment, Karen contacts Shouta and tells him that the girls were competing at swimming for the right to stay in his room for 1 week, and Natsu won. The next morning, Shouta wakes up next to Natsu, still not used to her presence. While they're getting ready for school, Natsu suddenly asks him to help her change clothes, since she's from a rich family and her maids always dress her, so she's not used to it. Wanting to help her, Shouta dresses her and they're both embarrassed, but he's trying to think about Yuzu the whole time. When he calls Yuzu after school and asks her to come to her room, she once again tells him he can't come, this time because she's on her period. She tells him he needs to get along with other girls too, because the others are going to get angry at her if Shouta only gives her his attention. That night in bed, Shouta can't stop thinking that Natsu might like him. Suddenly, Natsu gets up and asks him if she can sleep in his bed, since she usually can't sleep alone. Wanting to help her out again, Shouta lets her join him. While they're lying in bed, Natsu tells him she has loved him ever since she saw him and that she's glad that the virus appeared because she can be with him because of it. Shouta tells her he's happy too, and they end up kissing. Shouta takes off Natsu's clothes and sleeps with her, deciding to go with the flow. Meanwhile, Raito reflects on how famous he became for appearing on TV. 94% of Japan now watches a program about his daily life, and women who want his babies are gathering in front of the mating center every day. Mira says that Mahiro has been spending a lot of time in the refugee area, and she's concerned that they then find out Rito is her brother. The next day, Shouta wakes up with Natsu. The two got used to each other, and Natsu is sad that she will have to leave in a week. Shouta visits Yuzu at the music room and nervously confesses that he slept with Natsu. With tears in her eyes, Yuzu tells him there's no helping it since he belongs to everyone, and runs off in tears, leaving Shouta confused. Meeting up with Karen, Shouta tells her that using women like Yuzu and Natsu to keep him in a good mood while they get data from him is unfair towards them. Interrupting him, Karen takes him back to the classroom. In front of all the female students, she tells Shouta the school exists just so he sleep with as many girls as he can and make babies to save the human race. Before they brought the girls to the school, they made sure all of them are interested in him, so it's not like they're being forced to do anything. Hearing this, Shouta is shocked. Meanwhile, the directors of the United Women's headquarters in Japan decide to remove Mira as Raito's personal attendant, since she failed to make him procreate with any women. In his lab, Raito is working on the vaccine for the MK virus, but he's not getting anywhere. Suddenly, a half-naked woman enters his room, surprising him. She's lost in her thoughts and ends up falling on him, but as soon as she sees he's a man, she runs away scared. Later, Reigo is called in by two women from UA's headquarters in Japan and informed that Mira will be replaced as his attendant. Two other attendants will replace her. An unsympathetic woman called Riho will take care of his needs, and the timid woman he met before called Maria will help him with his research. Ri used to be a citizen relations officer who interacted with people on behalf of the United Women, so she knows the outside world well. After Mira leaves without a word for Rito, Ri bitterly tells him Mira lost her job because she couldn't make him sleep with any girls. She also tells him that he will be able to continue his research, but if he's not going to sleep with anyone, she will restrict all his other freedoms. Sometime later, Ri meets up with Mira. She calls Rito a loser who uses women as tools, but Mira tells her she's wrong and leaves. The next day, Rito travels with Maria, Ri, Akane, Sui, and Mira to Kaiman City. Maria tells him they are going to meet someone important for the research of the MK virus there. While they're talking, Rito accidentally startles her and makes her spill her drink all over her clothes. She's not used to men, so she gets startled easily. While she's changing in the bathroom, Rito apologizes to her on the other side of the door. He starts talking to her about theories of the MK virus creation, and Maria suddenly gets a lot more talkative. When he asks her if it's possible that the virus is man-made, she opens the door and faces him, extremely interested. She tells her the first victim of the MK virus in Japan appeared in Kaiman City, where they are heading to. When they arrive at their destination, they stay at a hot springs resort, and Maria, Akane, and Sui get excited about the food and the baths. The next day, Rito and the others visit Taniguchi, the woman whose deceased husband was the first person who contracted the MK virus in Japan. However, she forces them to go away, angry because they performed an autopsy on her husband. While they're leaving, Maria tells Rito that the virus appeared in multiple spots around the world at once and that they need Taniguchi's help because she's the only person who knows what her husband was doing before he got sick. The next day, Reigo and the others visit Taniguchi again, but she still won't talk to them, telling Rito it's more important for him to make babies right now. When Ri says that Rito hasn't slept with anyone after he woke up, Taniguchi tells everyone except him to leave. She doesn't understand why Rito isn't interested in any girls given his situation, but Rito tells her that he's only interested in the girl he loves. Taniguchi smiles, but turns away from him and tells him their conversation's over. That night, Sui brings Rito to the hot springs, but two random girls come by and he's forced to hide in the sauna. Surprising him, a blonde woman enters. Rito tries to leave, but the woman tells him she'll scream if he leaves, so he is forced to stay. The woman introduces herself as an exchange student from America called Chloe. Taking off her clothes, she challenges Rito to see who can stay in the hot sauna longer. If she leaves the sauna first, she won't tell anyone he's here, but if he gets out before her, he will have to do one thing she wants from him. While they're sweating, Chloe asks Rito if he wants to sleep with her, surprising him. However, he tells her he's not interested. A little while later, Chloe collapses in the sauna from the heat. When Rito brings her outside, Chloe wakes up and tells him she will scream if he doesn't kiss her. Having no other choice, he gets his lips closer to hers, but at that moment, Ri, Akane, and Sui appear, misunderstanding the situation. When they run out of the room, Chloe tells Rito she only pretended to collapse in the sauna. The next day, Rito and the others visit Taniguchi once again. This time, Taniguchi invites Mira to talk to her alone. She asks Mira what she thinks about Rito, and Mira tells her it's wonderful that he decided to work on a cure for the virus, but that he's too selfish for refusing to procreate. When Rito returns, Taniguchi asks him if he ever wants to have kids, and he tells her he does, but only with the person he loves. Taniguchi once again turns away from him and tells him to come the next day when she'll finally be ready to talk about her husband. It turns out that Taniguchi has been in contact with Elisa. She told her that she could give up on saving the world and be with the man she loves, but Elisa refused. She tells Taniguchi that even if Rito falls in love with someone else, she will always love only him. That night, while Taniguchi is sleeping, a mysterious person enters her room and injects her with an unknown substance. Visiting Taniguchi the next day, Rito finds out her condition has suddenly worsened and that she's in a coma. Before she lost consciousness, she told one of the nurses to give a photo of her and her husband to Rito. Sometime later, Rito, Sui, and Maria visit the abandoned hospital where Taniguchi's husband was brought after he was infected, the place where the pandemic started in Japan. Looking around, they don't find anything interesting. Back at the mating center, Hyuji is being pampered by several beautiful girls. However, he starts feeling sick of the same girls every day and wants something new. At the hot springs in Kaiman City, Mi is bathing when Akane joins her. Akane says that she found out that someone poisoned Taniguchi and asks Ri what she was doing that night. Ri tells her she was alone, writing a report to her superiors in her room. While Raido and the others are driving to the train station, Maria reveals that she has a little sister in Kaiman City who skipped a few grades to get into high school. It turns out the same school she's currently going to is the school where Shouta is being kept. Meanwhile, to mix things up for him, Neneko takes Kyuji into town to find a new girl for himself. When he sees Mahiru walking down the street, Hyujin tells her he wants to sleep with her. At the train station bathroom, scanning the picture Taniguchi gave him, Raido finds out it contains a paper about the development of the MK virus, confirming Elisa's theory that it was man-made. Joining the others, Raido doesn't know who he can trust among them. Somewhere else, Ri talks to a black-haired girl and tells her there's something she wants her to do. Having read the paper about the MK virus, Raido discovered some of the data in it was damaged and he can't restore it without another researcher's help. Talking to Maria, he asks her why the MK virus research is going so slowly. Maria tells him she wants to research it more, but the technical director limits her research and doesn't allow her to access other research data on the vaccine. All the major researchers are at the United Women's Global Headquarters in America, where the people at the top of UO have gathered all the top virologists, pharmacologists, and AI experts. Later, Kyuji meets up with Raido and practically begs him to let him go on a date with his sister, even though Mahiru isn't interested at all. When Kyuji tells him that he's in love with her, Raido gives in. In the United Women's headquarters in Japan, Ri and Neneko talk to their superiors about a fight between security and refugees in Area 15. Since more and more groups of people are starting to oppose Yuba, Ri suggests they use the popular Raido to distribute rations and make the people calm down. Her superiors agree with her and tell her to execute her idea as soon as possible. At the mating center, Maria and Akane talk to Raido in the shower, since nobody can hear them there. Akane knows that he found out a secret about the MK virus and tells him he could get killed if it comes out, but she won't tell him by who. When she tells him that in the past several years talented virologists have been vanishing, Raido starts thinking that's the reason why Elisa is in hiding. She also reveals that the leader of UWA's Japanese headquarters called Kihara is actually her mother. When Ri enters the room, they're forced to finish their conversation. Later, Ri visits Mira and tells her she has loved he ever since they went to school together. However, Mira doesn't feel the same and tells her she's not her girlfriend. While Ri is busy, Rita secretly meets up with Akane, Sui, and Maria in a refugee area where Yuma can't find them. Maria even established an underground network that they can use safely. Akane tells Raido he shouldn't trust Ri or the directors of UO, since all they want is control of the country. Sometime later, Raido starts distributing rations to the refugees. Suddenly, Ri notices a sniper on a roof aiming at Raido. She sends the black-haired girl from before to kill the assassin. Even though Ri doesn't like Raido, she knows Mira would be sad if he died. Sometime later, Kyuji finally gets his date with Mahiru while Raido is supervising them. Kyuji is enthusiastic, while Mahiru isn't interested in him at all. After a little while, she leaves, saying she's busy, and Kyuji realizes he has been rejected. At the hideout, Maria is surprised to find out that all the researchers who should be in America have been admitted in the hospital in Kaiman City, and that they have disappeared afterwards. Hearing this, Raido realizes that the abandoned hospital might be where the MK virus has been developed in the first place. Meanwhile, Shouta can't sleep and keeps thinking about Karen's revelation that he has been going to a school that was made just for him. Since Matsu's turn to be his roommate has almost passed, she wants to sleep with him again, but Shouta tells her he's not in the mood. He goes outside to get some fresh air, but Karen immediately finds him and tells him he can't leave the school grounds for his own safety, and takes him back to his room, leaving him confused and anxious. The next day at school, Karen tells the class to draw lots from a box to decide who will be Shouta's next roommate. A typical popular girl called Rika ends up winning, and Shouta is nervous since he's not good at dealing with those kinds of girls. While he's in the bathroom, the girl joins him and wants to make love to him then and there, but he notices she's exactly the same type of girl as one who used to bully him in the past, and he runs outside. He enters the A/V room where he would usually hide when he would get bullied 5 years ago. He notices a poster of his favorite idol group called Q's that wasn't there before. Suddenly, a girl from his class called Shumka enters. Seeing him there, she tells him to sit down with her. When they were at the pool, she noticed Ishaba's body was full of bruises, and he admits he was bullied while he went to school 5 years ago. Suddenly, Shumka takes her shirt off and reveals she also has bruises from being bullied. When she remembers those times, she comes to the A/V room to listen to music and forget the bad things, just like Shouta. When the two of them realize they're the same, they start kissing, and Shouta ends up taking her to his room. However, Rika is there and she wants Shouta for herself. When Rika and Shumka end up arguing over him, Shouta doesn't know how to deal with it and runs away. He calls Yuzu, but she doesn't answer. Coincidentally, Akira passes by and sits down with him. She asks him about his bruise and he jokingly tells her it still hurts at night sometimes. Genuinely worried about him, Akira tells him she'll do anything for him. Remembering that Karen told him that all the girls at the school are genuinely interested in him, Shouta tells Akira to roll up her shirt. When he sees her getting embarrassed, he quickly tells her he's joking, but she does it anyway. Shouta ends up touching her, but quickly runs away, thinking he's awful. The next day, he sees Akira cleaning the gym alone. He apologizes to her about taking advantage of her the previous night. Embarrassed, Akira tells him he can help her clean the gym equipment to make it up to her. She ends up taking Shouta into the gym storage room and throws herself at him. Turning out to be extremely interested in Shouta, she ties his legs together and they sleep together. Afterwards, Akira apologizes to Shouta, but he tells her he doesn't mind even though he felt awkward about it. The next day, Karen tells Shouta that every day from then on he's going to have a girl assigned to take care of him at school so he can get closer to everyone. To make it up for Shouta turning her away all the time, Karen makes Rika the first one, which delights her. Shouta has to give the girl assigned to him a good morning kiss, but he's too embarrassed to do it. When Karen tells everyone else to turn around, Rika kisses Shouta. When she wants another kiss, Shouta tries running away, but trips over a stool. Even though it's nothing serious, Karen takes him to the nurse's office, telling him he's humanity's treasure. After the nurse makes sure Shouta is alright, Karen takes Natsu, Shumka, and Akira to his bed, telling him they're there to make him feel better. The three of them all end up kissing him and they sleep with him, while Karen is observing them from a control room. Afterwards, at the science room, Chifyu asks Shouta to be his roommate. He asks Chifyu what she likes about him and she tells him she likes his face, kindness, and intelligence. Since Shouta never showed any interest in her, Chifyu asks him if she's not good enough and kisses her on her forehead, telling her she raised his confidence by complimenting him. With her own confidence raised too, Chifyu tells him it's time for them to sleep together, but Shouta tells her she will have to wait until she's grown up. Visiting his room, Karen tells Shouta that Yuzu Hase left Kaiman City for family reasons. Getting furious, Shouta demands Karen to bring Yuzu back, but Karen tells him it's impossible. Feeling like a bird in a cage, Shouta goes back to his room and tells Karen he'll sleep alone that night, but Karen seems pleased by the development. The next day, another girl gets assigned to Shouta and gives her a good morning kiss, this time without any complaints. He starts thinking he can have any of the girls he likes and for the first time asks Karen to send one of them to his room, where he sleeps with her that night. Afterwards, he starts thinking that Crazy World is driving him crazy himself. The next day, Karen introduces the class to a transfer student, and it turns out to be Cheyenne, Shouta's classmate from 5 years ago. Shouta remembers that Cheyenne used to be the most popular girl in his class. One day, while the usual boys were bullying him on the roof, Cheyenne and her friends went there to eat lunch. While her friends didn't think it was right eating lunch while someone was being bullied, Cheyenne didn't care at all. In the present, Shouta is sitting on that same roof when Shin arrives and asks him to help her. However, Shouta tells her he won't help her after everything she did to him. Talking to Natsu and Shumka in school, Cheyenne tries to find out more about Shouta. However, Natsu doesn't want to talk to her and refuses to think of her as her classmate since she's already out of high school. When they leave, Akira appears and tells Cheyenne that even though they're rivals, the girls in class are also friends who know each other, while Cheyenne isn't one of them. In the classroom, Karen tells Shouta that Cheyenne came to the school because she wanted to. Her dream was to become an entertainer, but since there are no more men, there was less demand for her. Since Shouta has a lot of influence for being a man, Cheyenne wants him to convince the United Women to give her a job as an entertainer. In order to prove her resolve to Shouta, Karen makes Cheyenne come to school wearing only underwear. Cheyenne is embarrassed and doesn't want to do it, but she has no other choice. The following day, since it's Shen's turn to take care of Shouta, he gives her a good morning kiss with pleasure. After school, he tells Cheyenne to come to the roof. When they meet up, he tells her that if she sleeps with him, he will help her. Cheyenne is happy he finally agreed to help her, but then Shouta calls some girls from class to the roof. Cheyenne is confused, but Shouta tells her he wants to sleep with her in front of them, just like Cheyenne ate her lunch on the roof while he was being bullied. Cheyenne is extremely embarrassed, but takes off her clothes and lets Shouta sleep with her. Afterwards, Karen tells Shouta he should become even wilder and do whatever he wants. Hearing this, Shouta asks her to bring him someone specific next time. A few days later, Karen finally fulfills Shouta's latest request. She brought Erica, the girl who bullied him 5 years ago, to him and chained her in the boys' bathroom. Erica is furious, but she can't disobey Shouta since Karen is threatening her. Remembering how Erica bullied him, Shouta throws a bucket of water in her face. He sits on the toilet and makes her lick the bruises he got from bullying, and she does it full of disgust. In her room, Karen calls her superior and finds out that someone from the United Women's global headquarters is arriving soon. She thinks that the technology director of the Japanese branch of UO is suspicious. Sometime later, Karen encourages the girls to work harder to make Shouta like them. From then on, they become more competitive and Shouta ends up sleeping with all of them. He finally decides to completely give in to this crazy world. It turns out that he chained Erika to his bed in his room, keeping her as a pet. One night, Erika feels sick as Shouta realizes she's a drug addict. He tells her he has some medicine for her, but she can only get it if she takes it from his mouth. Desperate, Erika lets Shouta kiss her for the pill. Meanwhile, the leaders from the United Women's global headquarters decide to take Raito to America, and a mysterious blonde woman sends an unknown black-haired woman to Japan. At the United Women's headquarters in Japan, the directors learn about someone called Mansfield arriving soon, who is from the Peacekeeping Activities Bureau of the United Women, which monitors potential threats to UA's leadership. However, they think they have the initiative since they have so many men in their custody. At the school in Kaiman City, a white-haired girl who Shouta wants to come to his room after school tells him she can't since she's on her period. That night, the girl gets a call from someone. It turns out it's Elisa, and that the two of them are planning to do something on the day when the messenger from United Women's global headquarters arrives. Meanwhile, Raito and the girls visit the abandoned hospital, accidentally uncovering a large air duct. They decide to crawl into it. Meanwhile, the directors from United Women in Japan welcome Mansfield. However, it turns out the woman who arrived isn't Mansfield, but actually the black-haired woman from before who is called Hope. While crawling through the air ducts in the hospital, Raito and the others find an opening through which they see people walking around, even though the hospital is supposed to be abandoned. Suddenly, they fall through the opening. The technical director sees them and with a smile on her face tells them that since they saw this place, they won't be able to leave alive. Suddenly, the technical director and her security are all shot dead. Chloe, who Raito met at the hot springs, arrives and introduces herself as Chloe Mansfield, the person in charge of the United Women's Peacekeeping Activities Bureau. When Raito revealed himself to the world, Chloe traveled to Japan and investigated the directors of the UW in Japan while pretending to be an exchange student. Suddenly, something explodes and Chloe leads everyone out of the facility and into a helicopter. It turns out the facility was rigged to explode for some reason. Meanwhile, at the school in Kaiman City, Cheyenne tries running away, but Karen and the security catch her. She wants to return to Tokyo and Karen tells her that soon her and the other girls will be freed. Suddenly, they hear an explosion. At the United Women's headquarters of Japan, Hope accuses Kara of knowing about the secret research facility in the abandoned hospital and hiding the fact that there is more than one male resistant to the MK virus in Japan. At that moment, Kara gives a signal to her security people to place Hope under arrest. However, the security suddenly points their guns at Kara and the other directors, telling them they work first and foremost for UW Global Headquarters. It also turns out that one of the directors, called Shundu, has been secretly reporting everything that has been going on in Japan to UW Global Headquarters. On behalf of the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, Hope places the directors under arrest for manufacturing and spreading the MK virus. Meanwhile, in the helicopter, Chloe tells Riito that the Japanese directors have been lying to him instead of helping him produce a cure for the virus. Because of the worldwide decrease in population caused by the MK virus, huge gaps in economic wealth formed and spread discontent among the people. When Kara revealed that apparently the only man resistant to the MK virus is under United Women's control, it caused more terrorist acts everywhere. Chloe says that Alyssa is one of the leaders of the terrorists opposing United Women, which surprises Raito. Suddenly, explosions start going off at the school grounds in Kaiman City, and Chloe reports to her superiors that a male there has been kidnapped by terrorists. The next morning, Shouta wakes up in the school hospital and sees Karen by his side. She apologizes to him for not watching him properly and tells him that terrorists tried to kidnap him. Suddenly, Natsu, Akira, Chifu, and Shunka enter the room, relieved that Shouta is fine. Taking him to the roof, Karen talks to Shouta alone. She tells him that there was a spy inside the school who enabled the terrorists to attack. She reveals that there are actually 4 more men besides him who are resistant to the MK virus, and Shouta gets paranoid. Karen is planning on taking him to Tokyo, where the messenger from UA's global headquarters is right now. She reveals that she wants to become the #1 woman in the whole world and also make him the #1 man. Hearing her out, Shouta decides to help with her ambitions. Meanwhile, the terrorist spy is observing all this. She contacts Elisa, telling her she failed to capture Shouta. Elisa tells her not to take any risks and leave the school. Meanwhile, Elisa and the other terrorists have stolen the cryostas's chamber of number 4. At the mating center, Shutu, who betrayed the Japanese directors, tells Mira, Naneko, and Reed to prepare to transport Raito and Kyuji to Tokyo. so they can protect them from the terrorists. Talking to her superiors in private, Chloe tells them that all the surviving men except number 4 are now in her control. The plans for Rado and Kyuji to make babies have been shut down. Shaba's whereabouts are unknown and number 5 is still frozen. That night, looking at the tracking application for his pendant, Rado sees that Alyssa's location is finally visible. She's in a city called Megata, but he doesn't know the exact location. Meanwhile, Chloe visits Kyuji in his room and Rina there. She tells him that only Neneko is allowed in his room and only his basic needs need to be fulfilled. Kyuji gets angry, telling her she can't boss him around. Taking Rado into the shower, Akane tells him about her mother, Kara, who was the National Affairs Director. She found out that the Japanese directors of Yuga Wegu are going to be put on trial, but she knows that her mother is innocent since she was always doing her best to fight the pandemic. Akane also doesn't trust Chloe. Suddenly, Maria runs into the room and tells the two that Elisa is on TV. Broadcasting to the entire world, Elisa says her organization is called Izanami and they want to free the world from Yue's rule. She says that UW is full of liars and shows a man called Zen on camera, who Maria recognizes as number 4. They also claim that Yuu's global headquarters have been using satellites to spread the MK virus around the world and that they want to eliminate all men to create a world with only women. They are also funding research for creating a way to give birth to children using only female genes. Elisa demands that all the men, both the resistant ones and those in cold sleep, are turned over at Uzanami so they can protect them. Suddenly, her broadcast stops and Shudu appears on screen, telling everyone not to believe the terrorists' lies. Storming into Chloe's room, Rado asks her what that broadcast was all about and Chloe tells him that Yubu didn't kill any men in cold sleep or any of the immunized men, so there's no proof that Elisa is right. Afterwards, talking to her superiors, Chloe reports that the Japanese people haven't reacted at all to Izanami's broadcast and Yumeru managed to entirely block the broadcast in the West. The superiors tell her that their staff and the women in leadership have been successfully brainwashed and everything is going according to plan. When Rado and the others return to his room, they find Shouta there. Shouta introduces himself as number 3, but he looks completely different than usual. We find out that sometime before that, Karen put Shouta into an aging machine, out of which he emerged 5 years older. She also got an eye surgery so he doesn't need glasses anymore. When Karen sees Maria, she takes her to Chief Yu, who turns out to be her little sister. They reunite happily and Maria thanks the other girls for taking care of her sister. Back in his room, Shouta is concerned about Yuzu, but Karen tells him she's somewhere safe, where even the Yube'i can't find her. Inviting Mira to his room, Rito gets in the shower with her and invites her to come with him and the others to find Elisa. Even though she's relieved that Rito trusts her, Mira starts crying and tells him there's no way she can come with him. She remembers how ever since she was little, she was taught everything about Rito. While she's crying, Rando tries to comfort her and they almost kiss, but suddenly they hear a crash. Hope and 2 security guards break into the shower and take Rado and Mira with them to the United Women's headquarters in Japan, where Akane and Sui have been captured too. Hope wants them all to come with America with them, since it's dangerous for Rado to stay in Japan because of Izanami. Suddenly, Akane and Sui beat up the security guards. Quickly, Hope takes Mira as a hostage, pointing a gun at her head, but Ri and Maria appear and electrocute her with a taser. Meanwhile, Shaba and Karen meet up with Chloe. Karen asks Chloe to let her speak to the 3 Magi, the 3 geniuses who run the United Women. They are extremely intelligent and all 3 hate men. Chloe is surprised that Karen knows about them and says that she might be able to meet them if Shouta listens to her. Finally, Karen asks Chloe to give her Kara's position as the National Affairs Director of Yuba, Japan. Early next morning, Rito and the girls visit a secret hideout where they meet up with Mahiru and some others, including Ri's black-haired companion. It turns out Ri is on Rito's side, but everything she is doing is for Mira's sake. That night, Ri leads Rito and the others to a ship where some of her associates will help them get away. However, Ri and Mira will stay behind and Ri promises to keep his brother Ryu safe. While the canon Maria, Sui, and Mahiru get on the ship, Rito thanks Mira for everything she has done for him. Mira tells him it was an honor to be at his side and Rito hugs her, telling her he will definitely come back. On the ship, it turns out the white-haired girl who infiltrated the school in Kaiman City is going to take everyone to Taiwan, where Elisa is currently heading to. Later, gets a call from Kyuji via an underground network. Kyuji tells him he made the right choice to escape, since Chloe doesn't let him leave or sleep with anyone. However, he wants to stay because he doesn't want to leave Neneko and his girlfriends behind. In a torture chamber, Chloe is punishing Hope for letting Rito go and makes her promise she won't fail next time. When Ri and Mira return to Chloe's office, Ri takes all the blame for helping Rito escape. Chloe sends the two to prison, and we find out that her plan really is exterminating all men. The next day, Karen tells Shota that she managed to convince Chloe to let him be the only man who will be allowed to sleep with women, and Shota is overjoyed. Arriving in Taiwan, Raito and the others are happy to see that it's a beautiful place full of life, the complete opposite from Tokyo. Rita sees Elisa waiting for him, and they reunite for the first time in 5 years. Immediately, Rita hugs her and tells her he's glad she's safe. Elisa tells him she's happy to finally see him, and the two of them decide to work together and make the cure for the MK virus.